So my name is Krish. I'm one of the co-founders of Chargebee. Four of us started together and started building out of an apartment. And we just wanted to build with our own money because we didn't know that we could actually raise money and all that. And then so it was team first. Then we looked at what product to build after coming out. And then we looked at 2-3 different products, and we picked building as a service. We all know what a do-it-yourself B2B SaaS product is, right? Which is that typically we expect people to just discover us on the web, try the product, and if they like the product, they integrate into their workflow systems, wherever we need to fit in, and then they go live, and they pay us, and then they go live, right? And then that's how we make money. And all through this, there is this optional low-touch sale process, which could just be substituted with support and so on. This is the typical definition of what we consider as a B2B SaaS do-it-yourself product. So there is this very interesting blog that I really like. Chaotic Flow is something I follow a lot, and they had this image. So I wrote to Joel and asked for his permission. So I want to touch upon this to give a little bit of context of where Chargebee fits in, so it gives a better sense of what we do. So when we say B2B SaaS, right, we all tend to think about a low-end or very low-priced product which people come in and then start purchasing themselves, right? That is classified as a B2B self-service model. There are products like FreshBooks, which is sold at $15, where you sign up and then accountant knows that I need to send an invoice. Instead of creating the invoice in Excel sheet or a Word, now he's going to go into FreshBooks and then he's going to send this invoice, right? So he makes the decision himself. So when there is a departmental buyer who makes the decision themselves, then that is a typical self-service product, and it can be at a very low cost. Then there are transactional systems where it touches upon one department head, but it also touches upon different personas of users. It's a transactional system, but the interesting thing is it may require a little bit of hand-holding, a low-touch sale or a mid-touch sale, where you may need to complement with some inside sales team. And then there is this whole enterprise, which is a beast, right? And then there are overlaps between these segments, which is not shown here, but there is this intersection of self-service and transactional enterprise, which is the mid-market segment and so on, which also exists in the market, right? Which we generally don't talk about much. But there is a lucrative market around that as well. So Chargebee, to give you some context of where Chargebee fits in. So we are a subscription management and billing product, right? And we all know, doesn't Stripe do that already, right? That's the first thing that goes on in the mind, which is exactly true, right? Because from a mindshare perspective, we all know that does some parts of what is necessary for anybody to just get started. And that's exactly the challenge for a company like Chargebee, right, from the very early days. So when you think invoicing, it's generally a finance guy's problem, right? And when you think taxes, it's a finance guy's problem. And then there is payments, which is generally taken up by a product manager or a developer who thinks, okay, I need to integrate into payment because I have this pricing on the website. I need to have this button where somebody clicks, trial, and then when they are ready to pay, I want to accept payments, right? And I want to connect into a payment gateway. And then there is billing intelligence, which is keeping track of who are your customers and what is the promise you made to these customers. Because you might go through multiple pricing iterations because your marketing or a sales team might want to say, guys, I'm not sure if we have the right pricing, right? Should we actually try changing this $9 pricing into $19 to see if it moves the needle in terms of conversion or revenue? Then you'll be like, okay, so we are going to change this basic plan into a $19 plan from $9 to $19. Now how do we go about doing it for existing customers? Of course, you grandfather in. So the billing intelligence information goes into your own product, where you build additional module within your product, where you keep on building this additional intelligence about proration, grandfathering prices, discounts, discount codes. Sometimes the customer might say, can I pay you guys annually just $99 and then I'll take this product, or $1,000 and then I'll take this product? And then you might be like, so that's interesting. Right? Somebody wants to pay $1,000 for my product. So let me just send an invoice to them and then do it in Excel sheet. Now all these are different silos of problems that actually comes across various team members in your team who might be coming across these problems. And now that is where the challenge is for a product of the nature of Chargebee, where The decision maker most likely is someone who is a product manager or a developer who is thinking, I want to integrate a payment gateway. And then later on, pretty much these use cases one after another keep coming up, right? And which means that a product of Chargebee's nature, we become kind of like enterprise software, right? A developer implements and then gives it off to somebody, and then somebody else's problem, right? They need to deal with it. Now, your buyer and the user are slightly different personas, and that brings in interesting challenges in terms of how do you appeal to them, which is the API needs to be good to appeal to a developer. You don't fight a developer's ego, tell them, no, you don't do it, right? It's boring, right? Or it's too easy, or it's something that is already a solved problem. It's something that you don't want to tell your developer. And you are then fighting developer's ego, because then it becomes like challenge accepted. I can do it myself, right? Versus, so that if that is your buyer, and then versus the actual user is somebody else who is a non-technical user who is going to come in and then think, all I want to just send is an invoice, right? Why is this product having price catalog, coupons, and all these things? I want just invoice, right? Why do you guys have subscription? Now, breaking down all these things from a user interaction perspective down to the user persona becomes slightly complex for a product of this nature, considering that the problem and the solution already exists in an enterprise market where they already acknowledge that this exists. And the second time entrepreneurs, generally people who are actually already doing $50 million and above, they all accept that, yes, I need a better billing system, and they invest internally or continue to purchase something, versus the early stage of the market is still very highly cannibalized, where it sits on top of payment gateway, or a lot of this intelligence lies within their system. And that is the nature of the market that we are dealing with. And yet, somehow when we started off, we thought we are going to go into a self-service market, simply because we don't have the confidence or the, the DNA within the team to say, okay, let's go build it for enterprise, right? So we all start with self-service, because that's a sweet spot where if you build it and then we throw it out in the market, and then hopefully a lot of people will buy, and then we are able to make it work, right? And that's the sweet spot we all go for. And that's the biggest challenge. So we all rely on inbound organic or AdWords, referrals, word of mouth, which is where we all want to go after. So when we started off and then launched this product, the interesting thing that happened was you look at who's your competitor. Of course, there is payment gateways, and then there is like for like solution, Recurly, Chargebee, which has been in the market for, I think they started in 2009, but they are not serving a lot of customers even when we had launched. And then there is Zuora, which is the category creator, who has raised more than $250 million, but serving a very small slice of the market, which is less than 1% of the market, which is less than 1,000 customers is all they serve. But they tell everybody that, okay, so if you are building the next big thing in subscriptions, then you come to me, right? Kind of category creator. Now, how do you actually get into a market where you are actually going into a space where it's do it yourself, self-service or transactional, and yet you give the product enough time for it to mature to the point where you know that now I can take on the bigger products or the bigger customers, it's mostly time, right? So if you try to break the product by trying to accelerate it too fast, you tend to not learn from your customers. The other part of the challenge is if you try to just go after the small companies all the time, then they churn out a lot, right? The early stage companies, churn can be very high because it's mostly involuntary churn, right? The companies always at 12 to 18 months or 20 to 24 months, they tend to actually die. And that's the reality of the market. But interestingly, when we are actually beginning to sell, one thing that happened, I think it's a lucky realization, was to, so we did this thing where, so how did we find our early customers? I'll walk through the journey and then before I touch upon this. So through the initial days when we launched the beta, I used to write about things like, okay, so how do you set up a good checkout experience for your customers and different things. And then I used to hang out in different forums of Authorize.net, Hacker News, and then different forums where people were asking, how do I set this recurring billing on top of PayPal, recurring billing on top of Authorize.net? And we were just genuinely curious, and then in the absence of our product, how can you solve it, right? So we would just go in and then answer that question saying, okay, here is how you solve it. And we stumbled upon some interesting people. And then I would sign off saying, okay, so here is how you do all of this. But by the way, my name is Krish, and then we are building this product, which is also attempting to solve this. So if you are interested in beta, just sign up here, and then when we are ready, we'll let you know. And that's how we gathered like about 400, 500 of these email IDs from people who were interested before we even launched. And then we started talking to some of these people when we were ready to launch. And the most interesting thing that happened was one of those customers, one of those prospects said, okay, so I am on your this product, which is already doing recurring billing, but the problem is I have a product that needs to ship physical goods. And I have this spreadsheet where I'm keeping track of my shipping address, but I'm collecting payments here. I don't know if I really collected the money every month, and I need one place where I am consistently seeing everything together. Otherwise, I'm just shipping out to people and then without realizing they have not paid, and I need a better way to do it. Now, that was an interesting insight that, okay, so in the checkout experience, they want to collect shipping address details so that they can collect everything before they are able to do this. So even though we started off as a billing product for SaaS companies, which is what we thought, there is this interesting digression coming in from customer feedback saying, I want to do it for physical goods. And we just built it anyways, right? But we made it an option where we said, okay, anyways, at some point we are going to go into e-commerce subscriptions, but then let's just digress a little bit to bring that feature back forward because somebody is asking. And then he was saying, I can guarantee you that I'll find more people, right? I have so many friends who are actually having the same problem, I'll tell them. And then we said, okay, let's just give this option to him in checkout without making the user interface complex. We said we made it optional through the backend. We would enable that shipping experience fields for him so he can collect it in the checkout on top of authorized.net. Or I think he was on PayPal Payflow Pro at that time. And that's how we got our first customer, right? By going away from a core feature a little bit, and then we got that customer, and then he kept on referring a few more people from the same space, where he would actually give very specific feedback about, okay, so here is what I would like to do. But pretty much everything we were aligning with the product roadmap while trying to learn about a completely different vertical that we could address. And that's how we got built initial traction. So that is something that we learned early on, that so you don't want to become a service company. At the same time, how do you reprioritize features in a way that you can still find some early traction is something we learned. But through them, we were able to learn a lot. We learned about some of the fundamentals in the model, which is discovering customers from somewhere else in the world, which is by engaging in community forums, writing in blogs, and then having call to actions in the blog, which makes them want to sign up for a trial, and then building the right bottleneck, which is have at least 100 visitors a day, right? Initially, you are looking at 10 visitors a day, and then how do you make it into 100 visitors a day on the website? And then from 100 visitors a day, can you convert that into 10 signups a week, right? And then from 10 signups a week, how do you make it into 10 signups a day? And then the next stage is, okay, now these signups are happening per week, but are they converting optimally, right? And then creating the bottleneck, lining up the bottlenecks one after another, and then doing this something that we learned by engaging with the early customers. Now, going back to this, knowing the real competitor, the biggest challenge we had was related to, so I went on this trip to San Francisco to meet prospects, but at the same time, took a list of people that we lost year and a half back, but they were doing well now. So we went to them and then tried to understand, why did you, so my conversation was, okay, I need 30 minutes of your time to talk, but I would like to know a little bit more about the choice that you made at that time. So the conversation was more about understanding how did they make the choice that they do not want to use Chargebee, and why did they say I do not want to use a product. An interesting learning was that at an idea stage where for a product of this nature, where, okay, so I have this product on the pricing page, now I want to start collecting some signups and I wanted to see if it sticks in the market. At that stage, they were saying, I was not sure if this idea is going to really take off, and I didn't know if I should pay for your product, right? And so I just built my own thing on top of the gateway. And later on, after buying several other products, because now things are taking off, now I don't think I'll make, my decision might be different. But they were actually willing to put in the additional effort, and they were valuing the $49 over their time while making the choice of the product. But the aspiration was that at some point they would like this to take off, but they are also not sure whether this is going to take off, right? And very clearly that was an indication that you are not competing with like for like solutions versus you are actually fighting in-house developers or an existing process which requires a lot more mind shift to be able to acquire those early stage companies, right? So that was a key learning for us, and that took us back to actually understanding the stack a little better in terms of value proposition that we need to build as a product. So if we look at it now, initial days we never had any of these pieces, right? In the initial iteration of the product we thought, okay, so it's recurring billing, and on top of this abstracts the API. So how are we doing it is how we looked at it. And then when we were actually going after the growth stage companies, the ones which are actually taking off, if we had lost them initial days and if we are going to acquire them a little later, we need to build a much better compelling case to acquire them later, which is going to be even more harder, because we need to tell them that this is probably not your core, it's already a solved problem. Just like the way now in hindsight we know that, okay, AWS is actually good, right? One of those infrastructure. Now everybody believes that, yeah, that backup and taking care of infrastructure is something I don't want to do because I have better things to do. CRM, help desk, we don't build it ourselves because it's a defined category. But we are in a category where invoicing is looked at as separate one, payments is looked at as separate one. But we are really not looking at these silos of these pieces, and then the different users in the organization who have a need for it is still not an established category from the early stage. So we started gathering the data to learn from this experience, and then started building better value proposition. But instead of actually throwing all these features for the early stage customers, we started segmenting it by the price plan in which different customers would buy, right? So I'll touch upon that a little later. So I'll come back to that topic a little later. The biggest mistake as first time entrepreneurs we made was not talk to enough people before building. Right? Because we think, okay, so the problem already exists, right? But why they buy and how they make the buying decision is something we didn't spend enough time actually discovering through the initial days. And that comes in hindsight, where after 2 years of building the product, getting even after this, we still got customers, right? It's not like we don't have customers, but the problem is it the right set of customers that you want is a different question altogether. That realization comes only by talking to a lot of people. I think we would have still gotten that feedback if we had spent a lot more time trying to understand the buying decision process a lot better, because the user is not going to answer the question the way that you want them to answer, right? So it's very hard to translate a question to the receiver's mind and why you are asking that question. But it's just a lot of conversations could have actually helped you discover that. I would highly recommend you to actually go through this. So the intersection of where Chargebee is at is the transforming from the transactional system to the mid-market, right? All the way from serving so the biggest challenge when building this product and continuing to iterate on the product is how do you remain self-service for a very large segment of customers? So as a product, we still serve lot of early stage companies, and we want to be spending as little effort as possible. Plus the developers themselves don't want to talk to you, right? The developers like to evaluate your product, and then if they like the product, they want to go with it. And you are also competing against the mindshare of somebody like a Stripe. They are also looking at Stripe or a Braintree and saying, okay, they have subscriptions, right? I don't need this product, and it's romanticized. And they love it, right? We love it. We are a Stripe partner. At the same time, now how do you go against the developer ego where you still make a solid case to tell them that, educate them that there is a lot more to this than what you think, and then build a solid case where you are bringing in other users in their company to evaluate with them. So it's not just one person's perspective before they choose or reject, right? Is a self-service challenge. And then moving on from the self-service to transactional, that is where the inside sales team offering a demo, inviting more users into the team, and having a highly responsive customer support which actually responds within an hour and a half is super important, right? Most of the customers who are at scale who come into Chargebee, migrate into Chargebee, talk about the need for a support team which specializes only in billing. So the rest of the team which deals with the problem, there is somebody who's available to tell them, okay, how to deal with that use case, right? If a finance guy says, I want to send this 2-year annual contract invoice to customer. I want to send this invoice in advance, but a subscription should kickstart in 1 month later. How do I do that? Now, there is a team that is available to actually help them. Now, these are pieces where there is so much money on the table available when you are actually looking at the intersection of self-service and transactional enterprise in the mid-market. By bringing in the essential services that are necessary, which is not necessarily part of the core product, but the service components that you can actually add on top, which are value-added services, that gives you the leverage to break into a market to move from the self-service all the way into the mid-market and enterprise. Now we have customers like AB InBev, which is the largest beer manufacturer, and then Schneider Electric, or Fujitsu, Soylent, right? Soylent is very different. They behave like SaaS company. They don't want to talk to you. They just want to sign up and do it. But then there are companies which are very highly aspirational breakout companies, but you are picking like a VC from the early days, right? You want a lot of them to start using, and then hopefully you'll have the breakout companies with you, while also going after the mid-market. But I think there is a lot of intersection that we generally tend to ignore as software engineers, which we can win over with a lot of other things that we can bring to the table, the soft aspects. One more big learning, right, and a lot of mistakes that we did around some of this is related to pricing. So pretty much every co-founder, right, if you talk to my co-founders, they will give you a different perspective of their learnings over the last few years. I think I was chatting with someone, and then they asked, okay, what is your biggest learning? And I said, okay, so the answer is going to be very different by different people when you go through that journey. But from my vantage point, it's very different, which is pricing, understanding pricing, product, and the perception of why somebody buys something at what value, I think plays a huge role. And that is my biggest learning around this journey. So when we started off, we had this, not even the $49, right? We actually went for super simple pricing. Actually, in hindsight, it's a stupid pricing, which is 20 cents per invoice. That's it. Now, when you say 20 cents per invoice and then no additional fee, it sounds like too good to be true. And you would think that this should be really interesting to a lot of early stage companies. And it really is. But the problem is somebody who is actually aspirational and wants to get to 10,000 invoices per month, and I want to get 10,000 customers, somebody who is ambitious, second-time entrepreneur, or a big company which is looking at our solution is not even going to sign up. Simply because they are going to do the mental maths and say $2,000 per month, right, for 10,000 customers. Is this true, right? Or what else does it bring to the table? And they may not even choose to sign up with your product simply because the pricing is a clear filter that just becomes a reason why they don't give their identity to you, or they do not want to try your product, right? The quality of leads that you bring in is dependent on this one big thing, which is the pricing page. So Shekhar, who is an investor from Axel, would repeatedly say this, which is you have 3 seconds of attention to get their permission for the next 30 seconds. And then you have 30 seconds to get their permission for the next 3 minutes. And that is how, and your pricing and your website is your only sales channel, which means that pay so much attention to that one fold on your website, homepage, and your pricing page. You nail that by talking to a lot of people, then you would have figured out a lot of other stuff, right? Was repeatedly, he would just hammer that point, right? How many times are you testing it? I think it's super important. And the other one is the $49 price point. For a product of our nature, which is actually critical, right? People are also worried about, are these guys going to be around? I'm going to build my billing system on top, and if this is $49 and if they say it does all these things, does it really do all these things? Now the credibility questions comes into play because they don't think it's premium. Now the idea of premium also varies by different segment, right? For somebody who is used to driving a Hyundai and using something very similar would be a different way. In Hyundai, generally, in a market like India, is considered as a middle class, right, upper middle class kind of a car. Versus the perception of what you would see in US is the Toyota is a lower end in US, right? Versus I would imagine here it's right, different brand, right, and all that, different brand. And then there are, so the idea of premium itself varies by different segment, and the restaurants that you go to are very similar. The things that you buy are very similar, and the same thing applies to even the products that people buy. Ultimately, even if you are selling to a business, they are going to purchase a HubSpot or a Marketo, right? And then they are going to purchase something else. Then Optimizely or a visual website optimizer, you should know that when they see a pricing which is very similar, they are likely looking for a product that actually looks, behaves, feels that way. And it's important that we understand which other products that they are using and then price accordingly so that we are able to align with them. And that has been one of the biggest learnings. And we made a ton of mistakes around freemium, which is, it's something that everybody likes to dabble with, right? Which is to say, if we put out freemium, then you can actually get a lot of early stage companies. Is something that we all like to do, but getting the freemium right is actually a very hard problem, right? Early days when we did the first iteration of freemium, we had this 10 invoices free per month. Now think about it, for an early stage company which is just launching, you would imagine that if somebody gives you 10 invoices free per month to get started, that's good, right? After you get 10 customers, you are okay to pay $49 and then you will move from there. Now the problem is twofold. One is the $49 pricing itself does not make it feel like a premium product, right? Because you are somebody who wants the best in class in every category of product that you want to use. Second thing is, it's 10 invoices free and then you are actually thinking about, early days you think, no, I'll get to 50, 100 customers very quickly, right? And then you're thinking, it's okay, let me pick the one that is right and I'll do it once and then I'm set for longer time. Now without that realization, if you're actually setting up a freemium for 10 invoices free, now the interesting thing is, in hindsight, it's very easy to just translate this into that kind of an argument. But when we launched it, suddenly our signups doubled, the number of people who were going live doubled, and our revenue was still holding steady, where we are actually making the same amount of money that we were making even earlier on a monthly basis, new sales. And then you would think freemium is actually working because your signups have doubled. And then some of these metrics are actually proxies, and then you think, that is working. And then after 3 months, you start tracking who are these people who are signing up really in your lead funnel. And you're spending a lot of time talking to them, and then they are going live. And after 6 months, they are also churning out. And it takes 5-6 months before you realize that the people who are actually signing up, a lot of them who are signing up, are actually service companies who have just under 10 customers and they think it's going to be a free product forever. And you are actually thinking your freemium is going to bring in people who are aspirational, who start with you as a free product, and then they have the aspiration to want to grow with you. Now, the aspirations are completely orthogonal, and it makes it extremely hard that your lead quality comes down significantly because the pricing acts as a filter on your website where it attracts the wrong audience to make them sign up. Now that is why having a clear call out for enterprise is extremely important. I would highly recommend you to read the status page blog on that topic if you have not, about how they actually moved their pricing by 20 times on the enterprise plan alone, and still they were making a lot more, getting a lot more signups, and were making a lot more money in new sales. And that is an interesting blog on by status page. So getting the value metric right is extremely important. So what we did was, after 5 months, we honored the pricing for everybody that we committed to, and then we shut down that pricing on the website. And then any new sign up that happened after that, we did not go back to freemium at all, right? And then still the revenue continued at the same level without issues, and then the quality of signups went up. But the good thing was the number of signups had doubled, and then it continued to remain steady at that level. So it gives you that bump in terms of number of that one metric that goes up. And then it continues to hold steady in terms of conversions and so on. But we could not let go of this freemium because we were in the early stage companies, and then the conversation with the companies that we did not win but were taking off later. So learning from this conversation, we went back to the model where we mimicked something what Braintree did, which is giving away first $50,000 of revenue free on the product, but not a $50,000 MRR. Instead, it's $50,000 of aggregate revenue, which means that now when you are starting off a product and you do not know if your idea is going to take off, you think, okay, so when I make my first $50,000 in revenue, by that time I'm going to be at $3,000, $5,000 in MRR, and paying a $99 for a freemium product or a premium product, which is available for free, is totally okay. Because now we also removed the $49 to make it $99. And very interestingly, what happened was the conversions improved, and we were also able to see the quality of conversations completely changed. And companies which are actually very highly aspirational, high quality companies, which the people who were actually making a lot more money, even when they were making money, were coming in to say, let me get started, and then they would migrate into Chargebee a little later. And now that behavior was completely different, and what we learned from that was getting the right value metric is extremely important. But I'll give the warning. I'll tell you the warning. Launching freemium is extremely hard, meaning it kind of stalls the revenue for a sustained period of time, right? And unless you have money in the bank and then you can actually do that, don't do it. It comes with that caveat. It takes a longer time for you to actually see the benefits of freemium. The other biggest learning around pricing is not throwing all the features or giving away the features. And we are, as engineers, we are altruistic, right? We say, let's give all the features. I think it's important, right? Let's just give it in the lower end of the plan. But the biggest problem with that is, one, it makes the product complex, or it makes the product feel complex by throwing a lot of things. And then it becomes harder and harder for you to abstract the complexity and keep it simple while still continuing to deliver value. And it also takes away the opportunity to know who really uses that feature. Not all the features are used by everybody, right? And knowing that, doing the research around that is super important. So changing the pricing on a continuous basis and then aligning these features versus value proposition and then having them on different plans is extremely important. One, to move the right metrics, which is new sales, churn, and then how do you achieve net negative churn? Which is, are your existing cohort of customers growing at any point of time? When I say that, if you look at month of January, are these customers after 12 months out, are they growing or not right now? Or is it a shrinking cohort or is it a growing cohort? To get that right, it is extremely important to align different aspects of product and pricing right to be able to help move the expansion revenue, reduce the churn, and deliver value to the customers.